Hey guys, it's me, Miss B. Today we're going to be working on inverse functions. We're going to be defining what inverse functions are, proving inverse functions, and finding inverse functions. Okay, so first off, we're going to do a couple of these problems here. I'm going to actually cross off this one, number 3. We're going to skip it for today. Alrighty, so first up, we're going to find f of g of x and g of f of x. So we did this before. We're going to go ahead and do it again. So, to find f of g of x, we're plugging in to f of x. Wherever there's an x, we're going to plug in g of x. So we're plugging in that x over 4. Then, of course, we want to simplify, so these cancel out, and we're left with just an x. All right, to find g of f of x, we want to find, what was I going to say? Oh, we want to plug in, wherever there's an x, we want to plug in f of x. So we're plugging in 4x. Those cancel out, and these 4's cancel out, and we're left with just an x. So there are our answers for number 1. That's f of x, f of g of x, and g of f of x. All right, number 2. Want to do the same thing here. So plugging in, finding f of g of x. So we have 3 times the quantity x minus 8 over 3 plus 8. To simplify, cross out those 3's, they cancel. We get x minus 8 plus 8, which is just an x. Then lastly, we want to find g of f of x. So we are going to plug in f of x wherever there's an x. So there's our numerator, and 3 is our denominator. To simplify, first we have to cancel out the 8's, so we get 3x over 3, which is just x. Okay, so if you need to, take a minute and copy those down. I went through them kind of fast because we already did notes on composite functions. All right, I want you to go ahead and answer this question right here over on this side. All right, so going through some definitions here. So to show that a function is the inverse of the other, we're going to show that f of g of x equals x and g of f of x equals x. Okay, I'm going to put a note here. Both have to be true. Both have to be true in order to have inverses. All right, so if we have a function g is the inverse of f, then we would denote that as the inverse f with the exponent of -1. But that's actually just the inverse of f is how we would read that. All right, the domain of f would then be equal to the range of the inverse of f. All right, so we'll get to that later. So circle back. Go ahead, answer what functions from the first page are inverses to each other. You should have put that both 1 and 2, so f of g of x and g of f of x, so g of x and f of x are inverses of each other. I'm going to go ahead and write that out. So f of x and g of x are inverses of each other. And that's because their composite functions are both equal to x. Okay? And then you should have actually the same thing for number 2. Okay? So they're both inverses. So number 1 and number 2 are inverses of each other. We have inverses. All right. So, solving for the inverse of a function is pretty easy if you know the steps. Once you get the steps down, you're going to be good to go. So first you want to replace f of x with y. And the reason we do that is because f of x means function of x, and we don't know if it's going to be a function or not. So we're going to do that. So replace that. Then you're going to interchange x and y. Third, solve for y. And then step 4, so if we don't have a function, so if the function f is not an inverse, if y is not defined as a function of x, then the function does not have an inverse function. It has an inverse, but it's not an inverse function. And then secondly, if the equation has an inverse function, then you're going to replace y for f inverse of x. Let's go ahead and do this example here. This is our one and only example. And then on the worksheet, we will have some collaborative work. All right, so we're going to go ahead and write out. So step 1, replace f of x with y. So I have y equals 3x minus 4. So step 1 was replace. Don't write this down. I'm just putting it for replace f of x with y. Okay, you do not need to write that down. 2, I'm going to say switch x and y. You're interchanging them. So wherever there's an x, you're putting a y. Change color here. And wherever there's a y, you're putting an x. So I just put that in a different color so you can see the change. Step 3, you want to solve for y. So we want to get y by itself. Okay, so the way we do that, we're going to add 4 to both sides. Get x equals, x plus 4 equals 3y. Divide by 3. So then y equals x plus 4 over 3. That was all step 3. All right, and then step 4 is going to be determined by if it's a function or not. This is a function. So then we are going to write it as an inverse function. So we're going to replace y with f inverse of x. So we get the inverse of f is equal to x plus 4 over 3. Ah, darn it. I don't know how to turn my notifications off. All right, so then this right here is our answer. Okay, that's it for today's notes. The rest of the page is for group work.